Officer Russell Tate had been with the Ridgewood Parish School District Police for 12 years when he walked into a situation that would destroy his career and cost the district $34.1 million. He was 44 years old, experienced enough to know better, old enough to understand consequences, but apparently convinced that his authority was the only credential that mattered in that building. Tate was the kind of officer who believed he could tell who belonged somewhere just by looking at them. He'd spent over a decade patrolling school hallways with a set of assumptions that had nothing to do with training and everything to do with bias. And those assumptions had gone unchecked for years. 9 formal complaints. 9. All 9 involving black staff members, parents, or visitors being questioned, stopped, or removed from school grounds. A pattern so obvious that a first-year recruit could have spotted it. One Wednesday morning in October, inside the cafeteria kitchen of Jefferson Davis Middle School in Ridgewood Parish, Louisiana, Tate confronted a black woman in a chef's coat and demanded she prove she had a right to be there. What Tate did next, dismissing her credentials, calling for backup on a business owner, and physically detaining her in front of cafeteria workers and students, would become proof of how unchecked racial profiling destroys careers, empties municipal budgets, and exposes systems that choose silence over accountability. A black woman in her early 50s, Denise Caldwell, was standing in the kitchen of a middle school cafeteria overseeing breakfast prep at 7:40 in the morning. Her company lanyard hung around her neck. Her clipboard was in her hand. No crime, no violation, no disturbance, just a business owner checking on her operation. But Officer Tate saw her through a filter so distorted by assumptions about who runs things that he couldn't process a black woman as the boss. Before we get into what happened next, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Jefferson Davis Middle School sits at the intersection of Magnolia Avenue and Parish Road 14 in Ridgewood Parish, Louisiana, about 40 minutes northwest of Baton Rouge. It's a sprawling single-story brick building from the early 1980s with long fluorescent-lit hallways, scuffed linoleum floors, and the kind of institutional architecture that hasn't changed much in 4 decades. The school serves roughly 620 students, grades 6 through 8, in a community where the median household income hovers around $38,000 and the free and reduced lunch rate sits above 72%. The cafeteria is the largest room in the building, a wide, open space with fold-out tables bolted to the floor and a serving line that feeds into a commercial kitchen in the back. It smells like industrial cleaner and whatever's on the breakfast menu. On any given morning, you'll hear the clatter of metal trays, the hum of walk-in coolers, and the voices of kitchen staff moving fast to get 300 breakfasts out before the first bell at 8:05. It was 7:35 a.m. on a Wednesday in mid-October. The air outside was heavy and damp, the kind of Louisiana morning that sticks to your skin before you even get out of the car. The parking lot was filling up. Buses were lined along the curb. Teachers were walking in with coffee cups and laptop bags. Inside the cafeteria kitchen, the breakfast shift was already in full motion, scrambled eggs, sausage patties, fruit cups, and cartons of milk being loaded onto trays. This was a normal morning, the kind of morning where nothing dramatic typically happens, the kind of morning that should have stayed ordinary. But at Jefferson Davis Middle School, in a parish where the school board had quietly renewed the same food service contract for 3 consecutive years because the vendor delivered results, ordinary was about to end. Because Officer Russell Tate had just walked through the cafeteria doors, and he'd already decided that someone in that kitchen didn't belong. Denise Caldwell had been in the food service industry for 28 years. 28 years of building something from nothing. She'd started at 19 as a line cook at a hotel restaurant in Shreveport, working double shifts and saving every dollar she could. By 24, she was a kitchen manager. By 29, she'd launched her first catering business out of a rented commercial kitchen with 2 employees and a used delivery van. By 35, she'd secured her first institutional contract, a small parish school district that needed someone to overhaul a failing lunch program. She delivered. The food improved. The participation rates climbed, the district renewed, word spread. By the time she was 40, Denise Caldwell had founded Caldwell Food Group, a certified minority-owned food service company that managed cafeteria operations for school districts, hospitals, and corporate campuses across Louisiana and Mississippi. Her supervisors at client organizations called her relentless. Her employees called her fair but demanding. The National School Nutrition Association had recognized her company twice for innovation in student meal programs. Her company had a reputation in the industry. When Caldwell Food Group took over a cafeteria, participation rates went up, waste went down, inspection scores improved. She'd built proprietary training programs for her kitchen managers, sourced produce from regional farms whenever possible, and had implemented a scratch cooking model that most institutional food companies considered too expensive and too labor-intensive to bother with. She bothered. And the results showed. 3 of her 7 active contracts had been renewed without competitive bidding because the client organizations didn't want to risk losing her. Caldwell had earned her associate degree in culinary arts from Bossier Parish Community College while working full-time, then completed her bachelor's in business administration at Louisiana Tech. She'd gone on to earn her ServSafe Manager certification, her school nutrition specialist credential from the School Nutrition Association, and a certificate in institutional food management from Cornell University's online program. She sat on the Louisiana Restaurant Association's advisory board and had been invited twice to speak at the National School Boards Association conference about improving nutrition outcomes in low-income districts. Her credentials weren't just impressive, they were the reason Ridgewood Parish had hired her company in the first place. At 52 years old, Denise Caldwell was exactly where she'd worked to be. She employed 143 people across 7 contracts. She'd raised 2 daughters as a single mother, put both through college, and built a company valued at over $12 million. She drove a black Cadillac Escalade, lived in a 4-bedroom house in a gated community outside Baton Rouge, and still woke up at 4:30 every morning because she believed that the person who signs the checks should know what the kitchens look like at sunrise. She was meticulous, disciplined, and fiercely proud of what she'd built. Her older daughter, Brianna, was finishing her MBA at Howard University. Her younger daughter, Kayla, taught 4th grade in East Baton Rouge Parish. Both of them had grown up watching their mother negotiate contracts at the kitchen table after midnight, drive to job sites at dawn, and handle every crisis personally because she refused to delegate what she hadn't mastered first. Denise Caldwell didn't just run a company. She had built a legacy, the kind of legacy that her mother, a domestic worker who'd cleaned houses in Shreveport for 30 years, had made possible by working jobs that never once carried her name. That Wednesday, Caldwell had driven to Jefferson Davis Middle School for a routine quarterly inspection. She did this personally for every contract, showed up unannounced, walked the kitchen, checked inventory, tasted the food, reviewed health and safety compliance. She'd arrived at 7:20 a.m., parked in the visitor's lot, and entered through the main office where the front desk secretary had buzzed her through without issue. She knew the building. She'd been there dozens of times. She wore black chef's pants, a white double-breasted chef's coat with her company logo embroidered on the chest, and black non-slip kitchen shoes. Her Caldwell Food Group lanyard hung around her neck with her company photo ID. Her clipboard held the quarterly inspection checklist she used at every site. She looked like what she was, the owner of a food service company conducting a routine visit to one of her operations. She'd spoken to 2 of her employees, checked the walk-in cooler temperatures, and was reviewing the breakfast production sheet when she heard the cafeteria door swing open and heavy boots on linoleum. But to one person in that building, Denise Caldwell's presence in that kitchen was a problem. She was a black woman giving instructions to staff, and that didn't match the picture in his head, and he decided to do something about it. Officer Russell Tate was 44 years old. He'd been the school resource officer at Jefferson Davis Middle School for 5 of his 12 years with the Ridgewood Parish School District Police Department. Before that, he'd spent 7 years rotating between 3 other schools in the district. He was known among faculty as someone who took his authority seriously, maybe too seriously. His supervisors described him in annual evaluations as dedicated to campus safety, but occasionally rigid in his interactions with visitors and staff. Translation: he had a problem with people who didn't look like they belonged, and he'd never been taught or forced to fix it. In 12 years, Tate had compiled a record that should have raised red flags at every level of supervision. 9 complaints. 9. All 9 involved black staff members, parents, or visitors being questioned, challenged, or removed from school property. 7 of them followed the same pattern. Tate would approach a black person on campus, demand identification, and refuse to accept what was presented. A black father dropping off his daughter's forgotten lunch was stopped in the hallway and told he needed to wait outside because he hadn't been cleared. He'd signed in at the front desk. A black substitute teacher was asked to prove she worked there, twice in the same day, after Tate claimed he didn't recognize her. She'd been subbing at the school for 3 weeks. A black janitor hired by the district was detained for 15 minutes in a stairwell because Tate insisted his uniform looked wrong. The man had been employed for 2 years. There were others. A black grandmother picking up her grandchild early for a doctor's appointment was followed through the hallway to the front office and asked to wait in the lobby while Tate called the child's mother to confirm the relationship. The mother was furious. A black college student completing a teaching internship was told she couldn't park in the staff lot because Tate didn't believe she was assigned to the school. Her cooperating teacher had to walk outside and physically escort her in. Each complaint ended the same way: a meeting with a supervisor, a note in the file, mandatory cultural sensitivity training that Tate attended, signed off on, and promptly ignored. 9 complaints in 12 years. 3 sustained, resulting in written reprimands and mandatory bias training. The other 6 closed with insufficient evidence or not sustained findings, despite witness statements and security footage that told a different story every time. The pattern was clear, the documentation was extensive, but somehow Russell Tate remained on patrol, badge intact, authority unchecked. That morning, Tate had been making his routine sweep of the building when he passed through the cafeteria at 7:38 a.m. He glanced through the kitchen window and saw a black woman in a chef's coat he didn't recognize, standing near the prep station, reviewing paperwork and giving instructions to 2 kitchen workers. In Tate's mind, something didn't add up. He knew the cafeteria staff. He knew their faces. This woman wasn't one of them. She had to be unauthorized. She had to be a problem. He didn't consider that she might be from the vendor's corporate office. He didn't think about the fact that Caldwell Food Group had a 3-year contract with the district. He didn't check with the front office. He just walked into that kitchen. Tate pushed through the swinging kitchen door at 7:40 a.m. His hand rested on his duty belt. His badge was prominently displayed. His expression was already set, jaw tight, eyes narrow, posture squared. He scanned the room and his gaze locked onto Denise Caldwell, a black woman he didn't recognize, carrying a clipboard, wearing a coat he didn't associate with the regular staff. In Tate's mind, that was the problem. He walked directly toward her. Do you think school resource officers should face consequences for racially profiling vendors and contractors on campus? Drop your answer below. Caldwell was reviewing the breakfast production numbers on her clipboard when she became aware of someone standing directly behind her. She turned and saw a uniformed officer, arms crossed, staring at her with the kind of expression that had nothing to do with security and everything to do with suspicion. Ma'am, step away from the serving line. You're not authorized to be in this kitchen. Caldwell blinked. She looked down at her chef's coat, her lanyard, her clipboard. She looked back at the officer. Excuse me, I'm the one who set this kitchen up. Tate didn't move. His hand stayed on his belt. I need to see your papers, work permit, employee ID, something that says you're authorized to be on school property. Caldwell reached for her lanyard and held it up, her company photo ID clearly printed with her name, title, and the Caldwell Food Group logo. This is my company ID. My name is Denise Caldwell. I'm the owner and CEO of Caldwell Food Group. We hold the food service contract for every school in this district. I'm here for a routine quarterly inspection. Tate glanced at the ID. His expression didn't change. Anyone can make a badge. I've been working this district 12 years. I know every vendor. I've never seen you before. You don't belong back here. Caldwell's jaw tightened. She'd dealt with this before. Not this exact situation, but the feeling, the assumption, the refusal to see what was right in front of someone's face. Officer, you can call the district office right now. Ask for Superintendent Morris or Director of Operations Pamela Beach. They'll confirm who I am and why I'm here. My contract is on file. I've been servicing this district for 3 years. Tate shook his head. I'm not calling anyone. You can either show me a real ID, a government-issued ID, or you can leave this building right now. This is where bias becomes impenetrable. Officer Tate had a woman standing in front of him wearing a chef's coat with a company logo, holding a company ID with her photograph on it, explaining a contract that had been active for 3 years and none of it registered. Because in his mind, the conclusion had already been reached. A black woman couldn't be the boss. A black woman couldn't own the company. The evidence didn't matter because the assumption had already overwritten reality. Think about what that means. This wasn't a situation where Tate had no information. He had a name. He had a photo ID. He had a logo on a professional uniform. He had employees in the room confirming who this woman was. And still, his mind rejected every piece of evidence because it contradicted the story he'd already written. A black woman in a kitchen is a worker, not an owner. That's not security. That's not protocol. That's a man who decided what he was looking at before he opened his eyes. The kitchen had gone quiet. 2 cafeteria workers near the serving line had stopped loading trays. A 3rd employee stood frozen by the walk-in cooler. Everyone was watching. One of the workers, a woman named Sheila Patterson, who'd been with Caldwell Food Group for 6 years, spoke up. Officer, that's Ms. Caldwell. She's our boss. She owns the company. Tate turned to her. I didn't ask you. Go back to work. He turned back to Caldwell. Last chance. ID or you're leaving. Caldwell's voice remained steady, but the edge was unmistakable. I've shown you my credentials. My employees have confirmed who I am. I'm asking you to verify with one phone call before this goes any further. Tate reached for his radio. Dispatch, I need backup at Jefferson Davis Middle Cafeteria Kitchen. I've got an unauthorized individual refusing to leave school property. Caldwell stared at him. 28 years of building a business, and she was being called an unauthorized individual in her own kitchen. A second officer, Michael Hebert, arrived within 4 minutes. By then, the commotion had drawn attention. A teacher passing through the cafeteria had stopped. A student aide had pulled out her phone. The breakfast line was stalled. Tate briefed Hebert in front of everyone. Unauthorized person in the kitchen, won't show valid ID, won't leave. Caldwell spoke before Hebert could respond. I'm Denise Caldwell. I own Caldwell Food Group. I hold the food service contract for this entire district. I've shown this officer my company ID. My employees have confirmed who I am. He refuses to verify anything. Hebert looked uncertain. He looked at the lanyard, the chef's coat, the logo. He looked at the cafeteria workers nodding. Hebert hesitated. He'd been with the district police for 3 years. He was younger than Tate, newer, and visibly uncomfortable. He glanced at the kitchen workers, who were staring at him now too. He glanced at the teacher in the doorway. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe to suggest they call the front office, maybe to ask Tate if he'd checked. But Tate spoke first, and Hebert closed his mouth. Later in his internal affairs statement, Hebert would say he knew something was wrong but didn't feel he could overrule a senior officer. That hesitation would cost him a 2-week suspension without pay, but Tate had already committed. Ma'am, put your hands behind your back. You're being detained for trespassing on school property. Caldwell knew she had a choice. She could resist and risk this turning physical in a middle school kitchen with students nearby, or she could comply, document everything, and let the system that failed her become the system that paid for it. She chose documentation over resistance. I'm complying under protest. My name is Denise Caldwell. I own the food service company that operates this cafeteria. This officer is detaining me for doing my job. Everyone in this kitchen is a witness. Tate pulled her arms behind her back and fastened flex cuffs around her wrists. The cuffs were tight. She winced but said nothing. He walked her out of the kitchen, through the cafeteria, past the serving line where students were starting to gather for breakfast, and into the hallway. Students stopped. A 6th grader with a breakfast tray froze mid-step. 2 boys near the milk cooler whispered to each other. A girl in a Jefferson Davis volleyball shirt stared with wide eyes as a woman in a chef's coat was marched past her in flex cuffs by a uniformed officer. These were children who were watching a black woman being removed from their school like a criminal while she calmly stated her name, her company, and her innocence. That image, a business owner restrained and paraded past the children her company fed every morning, would become the centerpiece of every news report that followed. Sheila Patterson had her phone out, so did the teacher by the door. The student aide was recording from the far corner of the cafeteria. Everything was being documented. Should school police be required to verify vendor credentials with administration before detaining anyone on campus? Let me know what you think. Assistant Principal Lorraine Dupree was in her office reviewing attendance reports when Sheila Patterson burst through the door at 7:52 a.m. Ms. Dupree, Officer Tate just arrested Ms. Caldwell. He put her in cuffs. In the kitchen, in front of everyone. Dupree stood immediately. She'd been with the school for 14 years and had personally coordinated Caldwell Food Group's quarterly inspections for the past 3. She knew exactly who Denise Caldwell was. She walked quickly down the hallway and found Tate standing outside the main office with Caldwell still in flex cuffs, her wrists red, her chef's coat wrinkled from being handled. Hebert stood to the side, looking visibly uncomfortable. Officer Tate, what is going on? I found an unauthorized individual in the kitchen. She refused to provide valid identification and refused to leave. I detained her for trespassing. Dupree looked at Caldwell. She looked at the lanyard. She looked at the chef's coat with the embroidered logo. Then she looked back at Tate. Officer Tate, this is Denise Caldwell. She owns Caldwell Food Group. Her company has a 3-year contract with this district. She was here for a quarterly inspection. I was expecting her. Tate's face shifted. Something flickered. Not guilt, not shame, but the first crack in his certainty. She didn't have a government-issued. Dupree cut him off. She doesn't need one. She's a contracted vendor. She signed in at the front desk this morning. She's been here dozens of times. Remove those restraints right now. Tate stood frozen for 3 seconds. Then he cut the flex cuffs. Caldwell rubbed her wrists. The marks were deep and visible. Dupree's voice dropped. Give me your badge. I'm calling Superintendent Morris and District Police Command. You're done here today. Ms. Dupree, I was following protocol. You detained a business owner in her own kitchen without making a single phone call to verify who she was. That's not protocol. That's profiling. Badge. Now. Tate unclipped his badge and handed it over. His hands were shaking. For the first time in 12 years, someone with authority had told him he was wrong, and meant it. Dupree turned to Caldwell. Ms. Caldwell, on behalf of this school, I am deeply sorry. This should never have happened. Caldwell nodded. Her voice was calm, but heavy. I appreciate that, Ms. Dupree, but this isn't just about today. This is about a pattern, and I intend to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. By 8:10 a.m., the front office was in controlled chaos. The principal had been called in from a meeting at the district building. The school secretary was fielding calls from parents who'd already heard from their children that something had happened in the cafeteria. Two of Caldwell's kitchen employees were in tears. Breakfast service had resumed, but the mood in the building had shifted permanently. Everyone knew something terrible had happened, and everyone knew it wasn't over. Should school resource officers face automatic termination after wrongful detention of verified contractors? Drop your answer. Within 3 hours, the videos had exploded across social media. Multiple angles, Sheila Patterson's footage from inside the kitchen, the student aide's recording from across the cafeteria, and the teacher's clip from the hallway showing Caldwell being walked out in flex cuffs. School officer detains black cafeteria owner, demands papers in her own kitchen. Louisiana business owner cuffed for working while black at school she services. Vendor with $12 company arrested by school cop who never seen her before. The outrage was immediate and intense. The NAACP Louisiana State Conference issued a statement condemning the detention and calling for a full investigation. The Louisiana Association of Educators demanded accountability. 3 school board members released individual statements distancing themselves from Tate's actions. The National Black Chamber of Commerce amplified Caldwell's story nationally. By that evening, the story had been picked up by local affiliates in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, then by national outlets. Cable news ran the cafeteria footage on loop. Social media timelines were flooded with the image of Caldwell in flex cuffs, her chef's coat clearly visible, her company logo facing the camera like an answer to a question nobody should have had to ask. The hashtag #SheOwnsTheCompany trended nationally for 2 days. Former clients of Caldwell Food Group posted testimonials about her professionalism. Employees shared stories about what it was like to work for a woman who showed up at dawn and knew every kitchen by heart. The narrative was overwhelming and unanimous. This woman was exactly who she said she was, and the officer who detained her never bothered to find out. Tate's career imploded within 72 hours. The Ridgewood Parish School District placed him on administrative leave by 11:00 a.m. that same Wednesday. By Friday, the district police chief had launched a formal internal affairs investigation. By the following Monday, 3 additional former complainants had come forward publicly, their stories corroborating the 9-complaint pattern that supervisors had spent years ignoring. Tate released a statement through his attorney. I was following standard protocol for unidentified individuals on school property. I regret any misunderstanding. It wasn't an apology, it was barely an acknowledgement. Denise Caldwell contacted an attorney within 48 hours. The lawsuit was filed 6 weeks later. It named Officer Russell Tate individually, the Ridgewood Parish School District, the Ridgewood Parish School District Police Department, Police Chief Harold Brossette, and Superintendent Gerald Morris for failure to supervise and remove a repeatedly reported officer. The claims were extensive: unlawful detention without probable cause, violation of civil rights under Section 1983, racial profiling and discrimination, excessive use of restraints during a non-threatening encounter, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation by characterizing a contracted vendor as an unauthorized trespasser over a police radio, and failure to train, supervise, and discipline officers with documented patterns of discriminatory conduct. The complaint included Tate's complete record, 9 complaints over 12 years, all 9 involving black individuals on school property, 3 sustained, 6 closed without meaningful investigation, a pattern that had been documented, noted, filed, and ignored until it targeted someone with the resources and resolve to fight back. The district's attorneys reviewed the evidence and reached the same conclusion: indefensible. The videos were everywhere. The witnesses were credible and numerous. The complaint history was damning. Caldwell's credentials were beyond dispute. And the optics, a school district's own officer detaining a black business owner in front of students, were catastrophic. Ridgewood Parish settled 11 months later, $34.1 million paid to Denise Caldwell and Caldwell Food Group. The settlement included $18.5 million in compensatory damages, $12 million in punitive damages, and $3.6 million covering legal fees, emotional distress claims, and reputational harm to Caldwell's business. The district's insurance carrier covered $21 million. The remaining $13.1 million came directly from the district's general fund, money that would have gone to classrooms, teachers, and students. Officer Russell Tate was terminated 14 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final. Officer Tate detained a contracted vendor without probable cause, refused to verify credentials through established district channels, and demonstrated a pattern of racially discriminatory policing documented across 9 formal complaints over 12 years of service. His continued employment poses an unacceptable risk to the district and the communities it serves. His employment is terminated effective immediately. Tate's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His law enforcement certification was revoked by the Louisiana Peace Officer Standards and Training Council. His 12-year career ended at 44 years old. He did not appeal. Police Chief Harold Brossette resigned 3 weeks later, citing personal reasons. Superintendent Morris announced his retirement effective at the end of the school year. Neither acknowledged the role their failures played in what happened. The Ridgewood Parish School District faced a reckoning that went far beyond one officer. The school board commissioned an independent review of all district police complaints going back 15 years. The findings were devastating. Of 47 total complaints filed against district officers, 31 involved black parents, staff, or visitors. 22 of those 31 had been closed without discipline. The review concluded that the district police department had no functional system for identifying repeat offenders, no threshold for escalating complaints to command, and no mechanism for tracking patterns across officers or schools. The system wasn't broken. It was designed to absorb complaints and produce silence. Reforms were announced within 60 days. Mandatory verification protocols requiring officers to contact administration before confronting any non-employee on campus. A 3-complaint threshold triggering automatic review by an independent civilian panel. Real-time body camera requirements for all school resource officers. Quarterly audits of all stops, detentions, and complaints disaggregated by race. And a new policy requiring the district to notify the state post council after any sustained complaint involving discrimination. Denise Caldwell testified before the Ridgewood Parish School Board at a public hearing 7 months after the incident. The room was standing room only. Local media lined the back wall. 3 cameras were rolling. Her testimony was measured, precise, and devastating. I'm a business owner. I've been in food service for 28 years. I built my company from a 2-person catering operation into a multi-million-dollar enterprise that employs 143 people and feeds thousands of children every single day. I hold contracts across 2 states. I've been recognized nationally for my work. She paused. On October 15th, I walked into a school kitchen that my company operates, a kitchen my employees staff, a kitchen my company equips, and I was treated like a criminal. I was wearing my chef's coat with my company logo. I was wearing my company ID around my neck. My employees identified me by name. And none of it mattered, because the officer who stopped me had already decided that a black woman couldn't be the one in charge. Another pause. 9 complaints. 9 complaints in 12 years, every single one involving a black person on school grounds. That's not a series of misunderstandings. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. A pattern this district documented and then ignored. A pattern you funded with taxpayer dollars. A pattern you allowed to continue until it cost you $34.1 million. Her voice carried the weight of every year she'd spent building something that a man with a badge tried to erase in 7 minutes. I stood in that hallway with marks on my wrists, and I watched students walk past me. Children, middle schoolers who saw a black woman in a chef's coat being treated like a trespasser in the building where her company prepares their breakfast. What did those children learn that morning? What message did this district send to every black child who walked past me? That no matter what you build, no matter what you earn, someone with a badge can decide you don't belong and there's nothing you can do about it. She steadied herself. My mother cleaned houses in Shreveport for 30 years. She never saw her name on a building. She never signed a contract. She never had employees. She worked so that I could. And I did. I built everything she dreamed for me. And on October 15th, a man who never bothered to make one phone call tried to take all of it away because he looked at me and saw a cafeteria worker who wandered in from the street. That settlement is accountability, but it doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the image of me being walked through a school cafeteria in restraints in front of children. It doesn't give back the dignity I lost that morning, and it doesn't answer the question I keep asking myself. She looked directly at the school board. If this happened to me, a business owner with a contract, credentials, employees who vouched for me, and the resources to fight back, what happens to the parent who drops off a forgotten lunch? What happens to the substitute teacher? What happens to the janitor? What happens to the people who don't have attorneys and cameras and a company behind them? The room was silent. Should 9 documented complaints of racial profiling trigger automatic termination for school resource officers? Drop your answer. This wasn't just about one officer and one cafeteria. This was about a school district that let Russell Tate accumulate 9 complaints over 12 years, 9 complaints that all told the same story, and did nothing meaningful to stop him. This was about a system that treated written reprimands and bias training as accountability when they were really just paperwork. Tate's record told the story his supervisors refused to read. 9 complaints, all involving black individuals, all on school property, all following the same script. Black person appears, Tate decides they don't belong, Tate confronts, Tate refuses evidence, Tate escalates. The pattern was unmistakable, but Ridgewood Parish treated each incident in isolation, never connecting them, never acknowledging the thread that ran through every single one. They filed complaints the way some people file junk mail, acknowledged and immediately forgotten. Russell Tate's career is over. That's consequence. The district paid $34.1 million. That's accountability. Police Chief Brossette resigned. Superintendent Morris retired. That's consequences finally reaching the people who enabled the pattern. But money and terminations don't undo what happened. They don't erase the image of a black business owner being walked through a school in restraints. They don't restore the dignity that was taken in front of students, staff, and cameras. They don't fix the message that was sent. You don't belong here, no matter what you've built, no matter what you own, no matter how many children your company feeds. The real question is, what changes now? Do school districts finally remove officers after 3 complaints instead of 9? Do they finally build systems that connect the dots before the dots become a multi-million-dollar lawsuit? Do they finally require officers to verify vendor credentials with administration before confronting anyone on campus? Do we finally stop treating cultural sensitivity training as a consequence when every study shows it changes nothing without enforcement? Do we finally acknowledge that when 31 out of 47 complaints in a district involve black people, the problem isn't 31 individual misunderstandings, it's a culture? Do we finally accept that the children sitting in those cafeterias are watching, and that what they see shapes what they believe about justice, authority, and who gets to belong? Because if we don't fix the system that kept Russell Tate on patrol for 12 years despite 9 complaints, if we don't address the culture that taught him a black woman in a chef's coat couldn't possibly be the boss, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next vendor, the next parent, the next viral video, and the next settlement that drains money from the children these districts are supposed to serve. Comment if you believe this should be law. School districts that employ officers with 5 or more discrimination complaints without removal face mandatory federal civil rights review and loss of federal education funding. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change starts with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. We're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the business owners, the parents, the teachers, and the ordinary people who deserve to exist in schools and workplaces without being criminalized for the color of their skin. This isn't just about one officer or one cafeteria. It's about all of us and the systems we're willing to tolerate until someone with enough fight decides to tear them down.